Today, every day, small cap investors visit Agoracom knowing this is the day to discover the world's next great company, to have their dreams come true. That's why I take to the open road, to find them, to tell their stories, to engage them, to bring them to life, because they want to connect with you from your office, your phone, your home, anywhere. Agoracom, find your dream.
Welcome to Beyond the Presentation, a production of Agoracom in which we speak with small cap executives and go through their PowerPoint presentations for all their investors to watch. With us today, I'm happy to have Bernard Tourillon, Chairman and CEO of HPQ Silicon. The company trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the stock symbol HPQ. For those of you who are new to the story, HPQ is planning on becoming a vertically integrated solar-grade silicon metal producer. That's with the goal of manufacturing solar cells. Now, more than just lip service, the company just secured $5.2 million in financing, including funds from the province of Quebec. And its two technology partners in this process are world leaders. You're going to find out about them today in their respective industries. Global leaders that are respected with a great track record of success. Now, done right, the company will end up reducing capital costs and operating costs by as much as 86%. Creating cost advantages never ever seen before in the solar industry. And on top of that, they'll greatly reduce the carbon footprint and eliminate the use of toxic chemicals that are now in use in the process of producing solar grade silicon metal. So without further ado, Bernard, thanks for joining us. Let's go through this presentation. But before we do, it's been a while since we had you. How are things going at HPQ?
You're going very, very well. Very, very well. Everything is advancing on track. Everything is moving forward. The plant is being assembled. Everything that needs to be done is being done. It's one of those boring moments when you're looking at paint dry in a certain way, but very important, you know.
Now, the paint may be drying, but it looks like you're going to be painting a masterpiece.
Yeah, of course.
And what I really like about today is that we're going through this presentation, and it seems like for the first time, when I've reviewed this presentation, the company has that confidence to be bold and make some pretty bold statements that you can't just make, you know, off the cuff, especially when you have the kind of partners you have. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and let's go through this presentation, starting with this opening slide, what it means, and then let's move forward.
Yeah, well, I'll give a bit of a genesis of how we got to this new presentation. You know, for the last, it's been over a year now, we're working with Apollon. And there's a big difference when you do something which is at lab scale, all right, and when you do cost estimation and everything else. And at the stage where we are at now, we've gone through the process of, you know, designing, building the pilot plan. Now we're just doing the final assembly and everything else. So our costing already gets to be better. And then with Apollon into it, we've sort of been able really to push the envelope of understanding what could be our cost. And we feel very comfortable where we are. We really feel comfortable when we say that we're going to be an emerging low-cost green solar silicon metal. I think what people don't really understand is that solar is becoming the new backbone of the energy industry. Fundamentally, in the last 45 years, the cost of making solar grade silicon or producing solar energies has been cut tremendously. And that energy is in high demand. Everybody sees it. There's a demand for green renewable energy and everywhere else. Just GM yesterday with their announcement saying basically we're moving away from carbon-based car to electric car.
Yeah, that was big.
So, you know, we're in the right space, and what few people don't realize is silicon metal is the backbone of the solar energy, okay? And we're going to be, with our solar-grade silicon metal, we're going to be the new backbone because we're going to bring about a paradigm shift, and that's what we're working on. That's what we say it's a bold statement. So, okay, we're going to go through this disclaimer. Whatever I say can change, and it's an R&D project. Let's really go to what is our mission statement? Well, in a certain way, we want to create a paradigm shift in the solar industry. Equivalent to paradigm shift that was the iPhone to the mobile. What was the paradigm shift really in the iPhone? Fundamentally, Apple took a technology, which was a cellular technology, which had, you know, reduced the cost of everything else and made it palpable for everybody to use and really become the central of their life, right? That was the paradigm shift. Well, that's what we intend to do. because we can start now with our PureVap and UMG process to produce solar grade silicon metal. That's basically going to allow it to become even cheaper, even, you know, go below the grid parity that we're reaching right now, and basically move it forward. So looking at our numbers, looking at our prediction, we can foresee that we're going to be making obsolete the processes to make metallurgic grade silicon metal and the processes to make solar grade silicon metal. Okay.
Now that's a pretty big statement coming out of a, you know, let me be devil's advocate, out of a small cap company on the TSX Venture Exchange, you know, located in Quebec. I guess we're going to see you back it up in here, but that's really, you really think the technology has the opportunity to make the current production processes for solar grade silicon metal obsolete? You're not just going to beat them or be a little better, but you think you're actually going to blow these guys out of the water?
Yes. Well, that doesn't come out from, you know, Bernard thought of this great idea, is how we're going to do it. This has been going through reflection, going through discussion with people that have been involved in industry. And I think when people see, when we present like we're going to do in this presentation, who our technical partner, what their expertise is, we truly understand what it is. And when I say paradigm shift, is that we're not talking of going away to different processes and different everything else. We're just talking of really pushing to a new paradigm, the way solar grade silicon metal has been produced. And we're just at the right cusp of it. So, and yes, we do believe that we can back this up. Now,
you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar opportunity potentially. This is not, we're going to produce a few things and sell a few things to the market and make a little bit of money.
Let's move to the next slide.
Okay.
If we move to the next slide, if people, I know it's a lot of slides, but fundamentally, what do you have to take a look at? These two yellow lines here, okay, has been the cost decrease of solar energy in a per watt. So comparable to everything else. So right now in the world, okay, if you want to build a carbon, you know, a coal plant, and environmental, all the issues, it's not even economical anymore. This is the demand for energy, okay? So it's going to go toward solar business. Gradually it's going to move towards solar business. So, and right now we're, like when I started showing this slide 2 years ago, okay, solar energy was 1% of the global energy market, okay? It's now 2%. And it's aiming to be 10%.
Doubling in a couple of years is massive growth.
It's for people to understand the speed of evolution of solar business, okay, it's just, you remember, I don't know, I'm old enough to remember the first Mac generation, okay, even before the Macintosh, okay? Well, the speed of growth of that technology, which was tremendous in a microchip environment, okay, solar is beating it by leaps and bounds.
Wow, okay, that's great. That's a great analogy.
This is literally where we are. And people have figured a way to tweak to the ultimate maximum the technologies that have been there. Now, there needs to be a new way of doing it to keep pushing it moving forward. That's what we think we're presenting. So how do we solve this? Basically, solar power is at the cusp of being like the iPhone just at the beginning. It's at the cusp of that. But you need more process improvement. Well, that's what we're bringing about, all right? And I can understand that the market is skeptical because it's a small company from Montreal doing this. I don't care. We're going to do it, okay? I've been long enough in this market that a lot of these people are going to wait until we have the pilot plant operational, starting to show these numbers before they'll start believing in them. These guys, you know, the size of the market is...
In all fairness, that's the way it goes, too. Early adopters. You bring up Apple and Mac. You know, there are a few people who adopted it, didn't believe in it, and early adopters who grew with the company, and then people came along later. But you're there. I want to be clear as you're going into this. This isn't just an idea. It's not a theory.
Not anymore.
Right.
It was a theory in 2014, okay? It was an idea in 2015 when we were building it. It started to gel, proven, and by 2019, it's going to be a reality. But we've attracted some pretty significant partners in the intellectual part of this, and the rest is going to start falling to it. So if you look at it, what are still going to be the barriers? You'll see a point in the presentation. Those barriers are still high CapEx, still there. We can reduce that by up to 86%. High OpEx, we can reduce it up to 60%. So fundamentally, it's a low margin business. Yeah.
Bernard, we're talking about CapEx reduced by 86%. What's a typical cost of a plant today
It depends on the size.
Are you saving a couple $1 million, tens of $1 million, or hundreds of $1 million when you're reducing it?
We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And what happened is the plants that were built, okay, to get us there, were built. Everybody was building them on the 20-year life cycle of the process. Okay, so they said, oh, we can afford, because the margin seemed to be so big at the beginning, they could afford multi-billion-dollar plant. Okay. Now they're sort of stuck, and there'll be a slide where people would truly understand what that means. So fundamentally, one of the issues in the segment that we're in, the solar industry, okay, which is making solar-grade silicon metal, has been the one for the last decade, which has not been the most touched on by improvement. Okay, it's been mostly down the line improvement. We went from using 5 grams of silicon metal to generate 1 watt down to 3.96 to generate 1 watt. If I was solely a solar grade silicon metal producer, that would be shitty because it would reduce my demand for my material. But since I'm talking fully integrated, it means that my plant can produce more solar cells and more energy. So that's the way I see it. So it's very positive for us. But I don't have to, I don't have to support the massive capex of everything else. So, we're at the cusp of deploying a process that will significantly reduce the cost and environmental. And this is what I'm going to show, and this is what people need to understand. But we feel very comfortable that to make sure solar truly reach that full, they'll need innovation like HPQ is pushing forward, and the market's going to start to realize them. And the key point for that is getting the pilot plant operational. And the key point for that before was closing the financing to get the pilot plant done. So,
reducing the cost. I know you're going to move on, and you can stay where you are right now. Reducing the cost sounds great. It's ironic that you talk about reducing the carbon footprint of solar, because most people would think, and you can address that later in the presentation. I just find that interesting at this point in the presentation where you say you're also going to be reducing the carbon footprint. That's of interest to me as well.
You see, George, HPQ as a solution to the problem of solar energy. Okay, we're looking at low-cost green tech for the renewable solar space. Renewable solar space, I think everybody understands, is going to become massive. Okay, the market in 2018 was $7 billion. It's estimated to become $11 billion for the solar-grade silicon metal. So we're in the right space, is moving up. Our proprietary process is relatively simple and allows us to do what nobody else can do, which is at the first transformation, go from low purity quartz, 98% something, and produce a 4N plus Si with low boron, around 1 ppm of everything else. Now, this is where the key is to our process at this stage, in the sense that just being able to do this puts us in a league of our own. But until we prove that we can do this at pilot scale, I don't think people are going to throw away the $300 million investment strategies just for a technology yet. They're just saying, let them prove at a pilot scale. But that's fundamentally how big it is. And we feel very comfortable. Now, this being said, I want people to realize that we still do not know what could be the maximum purity level to be attained by the PureVap process. But we are a resource technology company, not an R&D, not a pure R&D company. Okay, I'm more interested in what pathways can I implement to go generate revenues in the solar space, which is becoming so big. And this is why we've partnered up with Apollon. This is what we're working on it. This is why we believe that, our process with this, we can reduce CapEx between 60 to 80%, which is tremendous. Cash costs between 30 to 80%, and that plays big in the CapEx, and everything else. And we can also become greener by 96%.
Yeah, those numbers, I got to tell you, just to interject there, are blow-away numbers. We already talked about the CapEx and what that means. Several $100 million, which means it no-go on financing something, which is not a massive risk. And then the operating costs down 30, 60%. That's unbelievable. And the CO2 reduction by 96%. I mean, all of that just makes I'm starting to see the picture now where it looks like HPQ's mission statement has some great validity to it, where you're going to create this paradigm shift the way Apple did for mobile. So I just want to point that out, that these numbers are blowing me away.
Yeah, and the third part that's interesting is that, it's mostly technical, but when you go from a UMG to the process, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. So if we do 2,500 tons of, high purity silicon metal, we'll end up probably just producing 2,000 tons of solar grade silicon metal. So we'll be stuck with a 500 ton to do. So we've been looking at what to do with it. And one of the markets we've identified and we're interested in is the silicon metal for energy storage. Just to get an idea, it's just at the beginning cusp of this, but it's going to become one of those things. It's a known factor that, you know, silicon with graphite in the lithium batteries can tremendously increase the battery charge by 10%. And the market is just at the cusp.
But 10% or 10 times?
10 times. 10 times.
Right.
You're right. 10 times.
Right.
You're right. I did right.
I was going to say 10%.
No, it's 10 times. 10 times. Yeah, you're
now
right.
you're talking.
And basically the market, you know, this is going to be another $1 billion market that's going to go growing exponentially and everything else. So it's just to see that, you know, we do watch what's going on. We are aware of the market. We are aware of all the opportunities, and we will be flexible in our opportunity because we have something that nobody has. We have a Gen 2, which is a test machine, and we can learn from the Gen 2 and then improve the Gen 3. So
you might be in a position where you get two kicks at the can for the price of one, which is obviously solar is your entire focus. Mm-hmm. But then when you have the leftover, you know, that leftover 25%, you're talking about running that through the Gen 2 to make that applicable to energy storage.
Yeah, so we're going to be
essentially the battery. It was essentially the renewable energy battery market.
Yeah, it's exactly. And with the Gen 2, we can produce materials that to be used by laboratories to start testing it to develop a process. And we can do that while we're running the Gen 3 to do the solar grade. And then once we finish, we says, okay, this is how we're going to improve the Gen 2 to make the Gen 3 to do that. So that's what our plan is. But it's an additional. We're still moving on solar. Next slide. Okay. So basically, we have partners, PyroGenesis and Epcot Solar. And our plan is simple. We want to produce solar-grade silicon metals and solar wafer, and we want to produce high-purity silicon metal for the lithium silicon ion market. Those are big statements. What's our technical solution we're looking to implement this? Well, the PureVAP technology of PyroGenesis, okay, allows us to transfer quartz to high-purity silicon metal. So we're going to produce PureVAP Si. PyroGenesis and Napoleon working together, we'll figure out the pathways to UMGs. We have a very good idea of pathways to doing this. So we'll produce solar-grade silicon metal. And with Apollon, we'll figure a way how to do it. So fundamentally, we're talking from quartz all the way to silicon metal and everything else. What HPQ has done has been the facilitators for these worldwide leaders to work together. And when I say worldwide leader, look, we're working with PyroGenesis, 25 years of experience, 70 employees, 60 patents worldwide. 41,000 square foot inventor and manufacturing plant, and then the inventor of plasma atomization. Okay,
definitely. We obviously know them very well. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's not Bernard rinky-dink in his laboratory trying to invent some crazy idea about reading on the internet and doing some research. It's not that. We're talking about serious people doing some serious research.
And PyroGenesis, just to cut, because I know you got a few bullet points there. What I always liked about PyroGenesis when I talk to people about it is, look, their technology is sold for use on aircraft carriers for the U.S. Navy. That's the most expensive real estate on the planet. If your technology gets tested, approved, and actually implemented, you know what you're doing. DARPA tested technology. It said it's the best around for destroying chemical weapons and things like that. So they've got partners in the 3D space. They've got partners in the DROS. These guys know what they're doing on a global scale. That's what brings, I think, the credibility to what you're talking about. Not that you're not credible, but so many small cap companies that they claim that they are going to be the next greatest thing, and they fall flat on their face. But here you've got PyroGenesis, and you can talk to Epcot Solar. So you have two global leaders in their spaces.
See, I'm not the inventor. I'm the facilitator of this idea. I've been the one that had this idea. I've been the one pushing it forward. And my idea is to build the best team to do it. You don't succeed being alone in your freaking basement doing work. And that's what we build. We build a very good team. And one of the key parts that's actually gonna start moving with us is that PyroGenesis is now signing deals with their DROS, okay, with billion-dollar corporations to develop this. Okay, so this is going to add everything else. And PyroGenesis has an expertise of taking an idea from proof of concept all the way to commercial scale. They've done it multiple times, and that's the
highest levels of global.
That's the highest level of everything else. So it plays in a different field, and it talks to the potential of the idea that PyroGenesis was interested in. As Peter keeps saying it, one of his biggest assets is his people. Okay, and he's not going to waste their time on rinky-dink science model. okay, or
Right.
science.
PyroGenesis has nothing else. You could say, well, they got to take a shot at this because they got to try and figure out money, make money somewhere. But they're already selling their plasma torch process, their draw stripe process.
That's it. They don't have time to waste with a project.
They don't got time to waste. They got the biggest companies in the world who want their different technologies.
Exactly.
So I love Pyro as a customer.
So you know, we started working with them at the right time. We're right position, and now both of us understand how big this process can be. So it's really cool. And then you start adding to this Apollon Solar. Okay, this is a company that's been fully dedicated to the field of energy transition, and the principal of Apollon Solar and the team of engineers have been big proponent that we needed to move to UMG type process to make solar grade silicon metal because it's more flexible, multi-step thing. So these guys were created in 2001 by a team of engineers and scientists with a long-standing expertise in silicon purification, crystallization, solar silicon, photovoltaic state, and everything else. You know, these guys have been working at this for 17 years. Multiple people, PhD, just on those type of things. Okay, so when these guys tell us this is the way to go, how it's done, they've gone through it. Okay, they work on a 40 million euro R&D project from the French government. So they're now part of a group, an industrial group that's active in fine chemistry, perfume, and renewable energy. You know, renewable energy people are really interested, but they have 23 patents their name, and they hold the world record for the highest efficiency, 21.1% solar cell.
That's the part I love. I love that as it applies to what we're doing here.
So fundamentally, what HPQ has done is create the winning team, the dream team, to transform quartz to solar grade silicon metal cheaper. That's it. Now, how destructive are we? Okay, it's very nice. You remember I mentioned thermic process and everything else. Take a reduction in cost. Well, it says it all. If you take the barium of cost per kilogram for annual capacity, okay, we're at 15. Okay. The Chinese have been able, because Chinese government is the Chinese government, they've decided they're going to close their ultra pollutant plant in China that was doing solar grade silicon metal, and they've decided to create all brand new plants at the other end of China, Inner Mongolia, another province, just to have a cleaner process. And they've pushed and they tweaked to the ultimate maximum the existing process. The best they can do is $35 a kilogram of annual capacity, which is tremendous changing. Remember, like when I started this 3 years ago, we were talking $100 a kilogram. So in that regard,
you're more than 50% cheaper than
I'm 60% cheaper than the Chinese and everything else. So I think we're in a good position, our technology to everything else. Will they try to beat us to it, to steal our technologies? We're being very, very cautious, So this is why we're very cautious about everything we're doing, but we're moving forward. So this is just a visual image of what the dream team I've built, okay, and the process. And remember, this is sort of in a certain way my worst case scenario, because as I said, we don't know how the pure VAP can do alone. We know what the carbothermic parts of the process can do. We don't know what the other additional improvement we can do. We won't know about that until we get the final report.
You can still get better.
We definitely believe that we can get much better than this.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. We're actually having discussion. I wanted to have the worst case scenario presented. So this is my worst case scenario. I'm going to work on improving them and everything else.
Well, if visuals mean anything, that's a pretty damn great worst case scenario. That little green bar we lost now, and then everybody else over there. If that's your worst case scenario as to your disruptive potential in CapEx, that's unbelievable.
That's the worst case scenario that we see. So when I said the screwed up market of solar grade silicon metal, you literally have it here. Okay. So yes, there is a capacity in the world to produce 500,000 tons of solar grade silicon metal. And in 2018, there was 97 gigawatt of solar energy installed. That translated about a demand for about 388,000 metric ton. Okay. Well, as I said, downstream improvement financed by government incentive all made this possible. But we're now at a point where governments are now removing all their incentive. So it always creates a disturbance when that occurs. There's a disturbance in the force that really occurs. That's literally what happened. That's literally what happened. And that red line you see at $10 mark, okay, is the price at which polysilicon is presently selling. Okay. So, and this is just the cash costs. Okay. It doesn't include the capex cost of all these projects. And all these projects cost billions of dollars. So first line you see is this is where the demand is for solar grade silicon metal.
Which first line? Maybe you can move your cursor.
Well, yeah, I can move the cursor. If you see this one,
right?
Okay, 2018, 380,000. This is where it is. Okay, this is selling price. So to meet the demand, you realize that there's only 100,000 tons of capacity that can meet the demand and still break even. Not even make money. Break even. Okay. Demand is going to go up to here in 2019 and to here in 2020. What did that mean? Is solar grade silicon metal is sort of like condemned to oscillate between $10 and $15. Okay. That's not enough to validate these massive investments. The Chinese government could afford to do it and everything else, but they've built them so far away now, they got to ship the material all across China just to get it back there. So at one point, that economy won't stop working. Like they've decided to cut all the parity. So that gives an incredible opportunity for a technology like ours. This is where our cash cost is. Okay.
The thick red line is your cash.
Thick red line is our cash cost. Okay. I've been told that yes, there's some Chinese producers that have lower like the same type of cash costs that we do, but if you add their all-in costs, okay, they're at $14. Our all-in cost is going to be what? $8. So we're in a good position. That's where the capex plays into that advantage. So the message I want to pass is the market massive. The capacity of the industry to meet demand screwed up completely. There's an opportunity for a technology like ours to, when we validate that technology, to become the new gold standard moving forward.
So if I'm reading this right, because it's a bar, the unit costs keep increasing with the greater amount of production, but your thick red line is keeping operating costs at that same price all the way throughout.
Every box that you see is a different producer. Okay?
Got it.
So those are all the different producers in the world. So all the whites, all the everything else, all of those. This is why it's become, and these guys probably invested $1 billion to build their plant. So it's very, very painful for them to keep continuing. And this is why there isn't too many people focus on what we're doing. This is why a small company like HPQ, with the partners we have, is the one that can bring about that technology.
Yeah, now I see that. Okay. That's perfect.
George, when we say HPQ is a green process, it's not a joke, okay? 70% of the greenhouse emission generated when you install a solar panel basically comes from the silicon metal, solar grade silicon metal you do, okay?
Wow.
If depending where your solar cells are manufactured, the CO2 carbon is not going to be the same. When you produce your energy with it, it will be the same, basically no CO2 emission. But what was required in before, it's like people that want to buy electric car. Well, if they don't do 50,000 kilometers with their car, they're better off having an engine car because the overall life cycle. So if we want to be truly energy renewable and green, we got to think about life cycle, not just small images around. So in the full complete life cycle, okay, you produce solar grade silicon in China, produce 1 kilogram, you produce 141 kilograms of CO2.
That sounds like a big number.
It is a massive number. Okay, Apple invested money with the Hydro-Quebec to reduce the CO2 emission in aluminum manufacturing. Okay, aluminum creates for 1 ton of aluminum, you create 2 tons of CO2. Here we're talking 1 ton, 141 ton. Understand?
All right.
Just give you an idea. In Germany, which has a lot of renewable energy, they're still at 87 kilogram per 1 kilogram produced. Okay, our process, we're talking about 5.4 kilogram.
You're talking, that's where you get that 95%.
That's where we get the 96%.
Chopping that to almost negligible.
Well, yes. And just so people can realize, Quebec has announced they wanted to do 100 megawatt of a solar energy program in solar panel. So if they were to basically build that using Chinese-made solar cells, well, that would be the equivalent of importing 56,000 tons of CO2. If they're using German-made, 35,000 tons. If you're using ours, 2,354. So it's just to show people that not all solar cells are built equivalent. And ours
you're not just reducing the cost, but you're killing the carbon footprint at the same time, which I've got to think the market, more than ever, this is what they're demanding. I mean, the move for protecting the earth and greenhouse.
Well, if they truly want to be protecting the earth, this is going to be and don't get me wrong. In China, the Chinese-made solar cells are improving it because it's they're removing it against coal manufactured electricity. But in Quebec, where we use hydropower, it's not the same.
And it's interesting they use so if the panels came from China, it'd be the equivalent to 60,000 acres of forests in 1 year.
That's what you need to plant. You need to plant 60,000 if you want to offset.
If you want to offset that, you got to 60,000 acres, 37,000 for Germany, 2,000 for the pure. So I love those numbers because that really puts into perspective. That's unbelievable.
Yep. And it's, how can I say this? The green side is the plus, but what really differentiates us, CapEx reduction, OpEx reduction. But in addition to that, we're green. Greener.
And that is the most important, because if a plant's going to cost you $500 million using the traditional method, then financing becomes a much tougher decision at the end of the day. It just does. You're still talking about a lot of money. I don't care whose pockets you are. But if HPQ come along, reduce that by 80%, now you make the decision almost a non-starter. Let's just go. Yeah.
And so the next slide that we're showing is basically to get people to realize that, this is a much more advanced, completely de-risked project. Well, not completely de-risked, but if you look at the scale of risk, okay, it's, how can I say this? Our scale of risk versus our share price is completely reversed. We had the highest share price when the highest level of risk. Now we got the lowest risk. We have the lowest share price. But it's sort of normal when you go through a process like we're going. But I have no worries that as we demonstrate a pilot plant and we keep doing it, it's gonna balance themselves out and move forward. But if you look at this in the risk to risk, okay, in 2015 the risk was massive. 2016 also. Now with the pilot plant fully financed, everything else, the process moving forward, we're in an excellent position, and we have a history of successful results moving forward. Okay, we haven't hit any big, knock on wood, any big surprises that's going to make everything else. So, okay, George, another point, we're fully financed. That was one of the massive risks that we ended up having to deal with in 2018. And that's a massive one because we've been very honest and straightforward. When this project started in 2016, we said our budget was $8.26 million. Okay? We didn't have the money. So, and we basically, and it was for acquiring the intellectual property, designing, build, commissioning, and operating the Gen 2, the Gen 3 now at the PyroGenesis plant. Okay, but up to now, we've invested almost $5 million, 60% of the cost that we've raised.
I give you credit for rounding it down, $4,900,000. I would just put $5 million.
I know, it's like sometimes.
But up till now, you've raised and you've invested $5 million in this.
$5 million, which is
$3.2 million to go.
Cost. A lot of it was, until we got the government financing, a lot of it was with short-term investors, which sort of makes it more difficult to manage than usual, but we've gotten it there. And we're tremendously happy to have gotten the project where it is right now. And we've secured $5.2 million financing. So the pilot plant project is now fully financed, ready to move forward. What's really keen about it is with PyroGenesis now becoming our largest shareholders, it also secures our position. We now have the Quebec government, we have PyroGenesis. So nobody can come in.
That says a lot when your lead technical partner is also your biggest shareholder, because it's not as if you're just paying them in order to help with services and create the technology. There could be argument made that someone says, well, I'm getting paid, so even if I don't have faith in it, I'm going to collect this revenue from this company and do some work. But here, PyroGenesis is putting his money where its mouth is.
Yep.
They're not. They're actually. They've made an investment. They've got an investment of equity here. There's real cash in the line. So now in their mind, they're not wasting their time.
And the other key point that people don't understand is This was done at the premium to market. When it was done, when we negotiated this, it was a 40% of premium. Now it's up to 90% of premium. It's like it's complete. How can I say this? We removed the biggest risk, and then people decided to sell. Hey, it's market for you. I guess they wanted to go smoke some good marijuana stuff. I can't really explain it. That's the way it is. But the key point is, we're fully funded pilot plant program. Okay. So, what are the next key milestones? Well, the pilot plant is going to be operational middle of next year. So we're going to be looking at producing our first solar cell by the end of the year. That's what we're going to be pushing ourselves. We're going to continuously move an improving process, seeking customer preparation for commercialization. That's what we're really working on. And we think by 2020, we'll be in a position to take our first order of 2,500 tons. Now, some people might have heard me mention from time to time, I was thinking our first commercial plant will be 2,000 tons. Reworking on the numbers, playing around with PyroGenesis and everything else, we've decided our scaling up is going to be 50 ton, 2,500 ton reactor. You're starting instead of going straight to 2,000. You're starting. Yeah, it's just a question that the original plan was the 2,000 was to have two 1,000 reactor, and then when we scale up at 5,000, it'll be two 2,500 ton reactor. So we re-looked at those schedule, those costing, the risk parameters, and everything else. It says no, it should be much more logical to just go from 50 ton to 2,500 ton. Okay. And the cost parameters I'm giving is basically based on a plant capable of dealing with 5,000 tons of capacities, but only having one reactor of 2,500. So we get the 2,500 ton reactor working, and we add a second one in parallel, then we move the plant to 5,000 ton, and that completely reduces our cost. So everything has been designed around those costs, and the 5,000 ton, I use it as a number because it's pretty close to 1 gigawatt of solar energy. So we think by 2020 we'll be taking that decision.
Let me ask you the question that people are thinking about at home for sure, which is the pilot plant. Operational mid-2019. What level of confidence, because this is it, right? The pilot plant is basically the last step in validating with 100% certainty everything that you guys have validated up until this point. How comfortable does the dream team feel about success at the pilot plant stage for 2019?
At this moment, we don't foresee that many big issues with what's going on. As Peter continually says, there might be an issue that arises when we do it, but if anybody is equipped to deal and find a solution to it, it'll be the guys at Pyro. So,
but that's happened along the way also, right?
Yeah, it's part of the normal research and development project, or as we affectionately call research and destroy. Hopefully.
So it's safe to say that everyone feels comfortable that there aren't any major hurdles in front of you, or oh my goodness,
we've tested the biggest hurdle with the Gen 2. Okay,
that was the biggest hurdle? So you guys have gone through the biggest hurdle?
We've gone through the biggest hurdle that we can guess. There's always unknown. But at this moment, when we look at it, we feel very comfortable with the risk profile. Pyro wouldn't invest if they didn't feel comfortable with risk profile.
Yep. And no, I'm just asking as devil's advocate.
Yeah, I know.
Because to me, when the Quebec government invests and PyroGenesis invests and Epcot Solar is right there, and you guys are technology partners, and you're moving ahead as fast as you guys are moving, it obviously by inference, tells me and should be telling people at home that the partners all feel very, very good. Otherwise, they would have put a screeching halt to it, and try to figure problems out. But we haven't seen that, and I love what you guys are doing, but I've got to put to the test also. I want to make sure it's softball.
So the final thing is, originally our plan was to mothball the 50 ton per year pilot plant, but we've been doing a little bit of research and everything else, and we're going to be probably looking at converting it into a producing machine for the silicon lithium batteries, because it's a market that's going to be growing. It's going to be a market where looks like we can generate money immediately with that machine, enter the space, and start getting some contracts moving in that space. So
and would that go through the same process where if you're successful at 50 tons, then for the battery space, then you'll go get bigger machinery and bigger capacity, but you'll start at 50.
Yeah, so basically, we've done Gen 2 for the solar part. Now we're going to do Gen 2 for the battery space, and then once Gen 3 has done its work for the solar space, then we'll be starting looking at Gen 4, the first commercial plant. Then we can start doing this. But the advantage is we're thinking we can start looking at revenues.
Yeah, so instead of mothballing, I love that. So you're off to Gen 3 instead of mothballing Gen 2. It's now going to be doing the same research work that you guys did for the solar side, for the for the battery side. That's fantastic.
That's what we're envisioning. So I think this slide covers everything. Why invest? Well, the successful innovation that will reduce the cost barrier to renewable energies. And it really shows that our PureVat process is competitive in the traditional silicon metal space, okay? And it is competitive in the solar space. You know, when we said, like, we cut CapEx by 60% versus the Chinese. 86 is the highest one. OpEx 30% versus the Chinese. So that really puts us in a good area. So this slide just, this slide is just everything we've talked about.
Yeah.
So, that's it. This is the conclusion. Why HPQ? And we're going to start to go out and start selling it more. And, we've done a little bit of road shows as we were selling the Bose Goldfield situation, and the reception has been very, very positive. So, starting next year, we're going to go out and start talking more about it. So just capital management and everything else. We have good cash position. Key point is 58% is a fully diluted basis is controlled by insider and everything else. So we're not in the position where somebody can try to scoop us for cheap just to get the technology.
Because I was just doing some math on the back of the napkin here saying, if I get some funding together, I can go pick up this company for cheap.
Yes, that's the concept of it.
I could become your boss. I could have become your boss, but all kidding aside, that's good to know. And I'm glad to know that the company's fully funded. I think that's
I'll just finish my presentation with this little interesting. Yep. Solar is so big that even there's now even hidden Mickey solar plants. This is Epcot in Florida.
Yep,
they're using it. They're using it to produce their own electricity.
Look, I got to tell you, we'll end off on this note. I can't wait until solar becomes, like I said before, becomes this. If I want to put a pool in my backyard, I got to put these massive solar panels on my roof. I don't like it. I hate it. I want to see it become part of everyday life. We can incorporate it into, at a micro level. And if it looks like, is that the kind of thing, the kind of innovation that you see going forward?
There's going to be multi-level innovation. Our process might be more for big, large solar parks, solar farms, and there's going to be other innovation that are going to come in for solar house, solar bricks, those type of things. As we keep reducing the cost of the backbone, which is the solar grade silicon metal, innovation is going to come into it. The cheaper it gets, at one point you got to get maximum solar efficiency. If it gets to be so cheap where you don't really need to have the maximum sun efficiency to be economical, then we shall see.
All right. Well, in the meantime, we know that Elon Musk wants to make roof tiles into solar tiles.
He's successfully doing it and doing everything else, but it's going to be a question of the cost and everything else. If we can reduce the cost to have solar everywhere, it'll be great.
Bernard, thanks for joining us today. Amazing presentation. It's a great presentation too, because everyone who's been following HPQ over the last 3 years, look, it's easy to kind of get lost along the way because it's very technical. People have everyday lives, and it's hard to sometimes follow exactly where the company is. So that presentation, I think, is a great presentation that helps everyone understand where you've been, what your advantages are, and where you're going. And for me, I mean, it's the end of 2018 essentially. So when we talk about 2019 and 2020, essentially 2020 is 12 months away from here. Essentially. So good luck in 2019 with the pilot plant. Obviously, we're going to have you back on here a number of times, but for me, that's the exciting part is the success of the pilot plant. Can't wait to see that happen.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us, everyone at home. As usual, if you've got questions for Bernard, get to Agoracom, get to the HPQ forum, ask your questions. Bernard will be more than happy to answer them. I'm sure you've got quite a few questions now that you've seen this technological presentation. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.